so for our ninth topic, it's tips about record keeping to make sure that you are protecting your trademark in case you get into a dispute. Now, as Eric's already mentioned, the goal most of the time is to resolve disputes before you get into litigation. Litigation's an expensive process. It takes time. There's a lot of uncertainty involved, and so by all means, you want to do everything you can to avoid it. But in the event that you do end up in litigation, you want to make sure you have the evidence available to support your claims. And having that evidence available is something that can also lead to a settlement quicker out of litigation if someone knows that you can back everything up. And so with a little bit of time every year while you own your mark, as your mark's getting stronger and people are becoming familiar with it, if you just kind of keep track of evidence that'll help document that progress of your mark becoming stronger, you will be able to make sure that it'll equip you to fight off infringers in the future. So, for example, take an image every year, a picture or a copy of marketing materials for every product or service that you use your mark with in a year. This is handy evidence for showing that you've continuously been using the mark on a particular product. That there haven't been years off when you haven't been using it, that you haven't abandoned it. Another good thing is to capture examples of advertisements. Take some samples from every year and put them away in a file folder and add to that every single year, because that shows how you've been using the mark, that you've been using it properly, and that you've been investing in advertising. Capture images of your website on a regular basis for the same reason. It shows how you've been using the mark, and it shows how it's evolved over the years. Keep basic figures about advertising expenditures for your mark for various products on a yearly basis. Revenues that you've collected from products and services under your mark for every year. It doesn't have to be tremendously detailed, but you do want some record there that you can point to and show that you've had sales over time, that you've been spending money to make your mark well known to the public. Those things help build up the fame and the scope of protection that you are entitled to. And then keep records that document the creation of your name or logo. What other names or logos were you considering? Why you picked your name. If you have documentation about that process, keep it handy because it may be useful later. And also, if you learn about customers or suppliers being confused between someone else's mark and yours, keep a good record of that, and perhaps immediately refer it to an attorney. A very strong element in any dispute is evidence of consumers mistaking one mark for another. So, for example, if you received returns of a product that someone bought from somebody else, and then they mistakenly sent it to you, thinking it came from you, that's pretty strong evidence that consumers couldn't tell the difference between the sources where they were buying the product. And so that's something you'll definitely want to look into if you find that someone else is using a mark that's confusing people to that extent. And finally, a thing that's particularly important for small businesses and entrepreneurs as they launch their business is keeping track of this, documenting the steps you've done to launch your business before you've, say, filed an intent to use application that we discussed earlier. Make some documentation before you take that step to show that you really do have a legitimate intent to go into business with that mark. That's something that larger companies have keyed on and started attacking smaller businesses who have a great idea and maybe go right out and apply for an intent to use a trademark, but then can't come up with the documentation to support it. And so the bonus tip is an important thing for meeting all your deadlines to make your trademark registration, to keep your trademark registration valid. And that's set up a system, for managing renewal dates for your trademark registration. Calendar dates for these renewals are years off, and you need to be careful that if you change emails or you change your computer and move to a different calendar, you've still got something to pop up and remind you that you've got to take action to maintain your trademark registration. Attorneys have docketing systems that monitor that, and there are people who can take care of that for you, but it's also important to keep track of those dates yourself. And so be very careful about that because they're difficult to keep track of sometimes because they're so infrequent.
Yeah, and I think the idea that I thought of to deal with that is to, like how we change the batteries in our smoke alarm every year, either when you set the clock forward or fall back. I'm not sure which one it is, but you're supposed to check your smoke alarm batteries. Same type of thing, you could make it every year when you pay your taxes, maybe. Go check on your trademarks, see if there's any deadlines coming up. Also see if there's any that you haven't protected that maybe you should have. Or maybe it's New Year's, or whatever date works for you, but make it sort of an annual event that you're going to check all your renewal dates and examine your trademark portfolio. The final and 10th tip is what does 2011 hold in store for trademarks? And I'm just going to run through this quickly so we can get to some questions. Basically, 2010 and now into 2011, we're seeing an increase in the number of infringement situations and the number of disputes. Part of this is more of them are played out in the news and the media. Facebook's been in the news a lot regarding their trademarks. Apple's always in the news regarding their trademarks and product names. But I think it's partly because there's more and more entrepreneurs in this economy, people starting small businesses, and even existing brands are expanding into parallel products or related brands, as every brand wants to grow and expand and multiply. And so the number of creative and good trademarks out there, it's just a more crowded field, and so there's more disputes as a result. And I think that trend will certainly continue in 2011. Another trend that we're seeing is more companies investing in non-traditional trademarks. And by non-traditional, I mean they're not names or slogans or logos, but they're things like shapes. Like the shape of a Coca-Cola bottle is one of the most well-known trademarks, and it is registered as a trademark for that shape. That's one of the most well-known trademarks in the world. Liquor bottles. If you look behind the bar next time you're in a restaurant, you'll see that every trendy drink now, the bottle that it's sold in has a unique shape or a unique design on it. Many of those are registered trademarks, like the Absolute bottle, or like the red wax seal on a Maker's Mark bottle. Another example of a non-traditional trademark is a sound. Things like the chimes on NBC that they play during certain promos. Some cell phone ringer sounds are potentially source identifying trademarks, so there's been some disputes about that in recent years. So what does this mean for you? If your company has done something really creative that helps identify your company, it could be a display in your store, it could be a product packaging design, or something along those lines, protect it. It could be a very valuable asset. Another area of growth and expansion in trademark field in 2011 is mobile phone app names and logos. Again, every big business, even small business now, is trying to move into this world of phone applications, and you're seeing more disputes over names of apps and logos for apps. And one final thing for 2011 is that there's a study going on right now by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office where they're studying, and the study was commissioned by Congress last year, where they're studying the possibility that there are trademark litigation tactics taken on by trademark owners, most generally by big businesses, that are unfairly impacting the rights of small businesses. This is something that our firm is actively monitoring and been involved in and commented on. So we're certainly eager to see if 2011 brings more developments in that area. You can read more about that at uspto.gov, or you can read more about that on our website, or subscribe to our newsletter and get updates. You can subscribe to our newsletter at our website. We've got two websites. One is ericpelton.com, www.ericpelton.com, or TM for Small Biz, and that's TM with the numeral 4, Small Biz, SMALLBIZ. It's actually written right here. It's a part of our Facebook username as well, TM for Small Biz.
.com.
Yes, but the website is .com.